Hey, you're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie. Super excited to be here with my awesome co-host. Ivan, will you go ahead and introduce today's guest and maybe yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Ivan Zach, a co-host of the Veterinary Innovation Podcast and ex-veterinarian, or always veterinarian, and the creator of SmartFlow. I want to introduce Dan Espinal. Hopefully that's how you pronounce that. Dan and I met through IDEX, and we kind of researched Dan a little bit and found more information about him. So what we know is that he is the member of the board of directors of Boys and Girls Clubs of Southern Maine. I can't speak this morning. He earned a Combat Infantryman Badge and Combat Advisor for the U.S. Army in Afghanistan between November 2007 and 2008. He climbed Mount Elbrus, a dormant volcano in southern Russia in 2013, which I didn't know about, which is really cool. He ran in 2000 the New York City Marathon. He absolutely loves Portland, where he lives. His soulmate is Boston Terrier. His first 6 jobs were lawnmower, grocery store bagger, sales assistant at Barnes & Noble, telephone fundraiser at the university, landscaper, and ROTC cadet. His favorite 2 shows are Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. And then after the military, he gained a degree at MIT in double major in economics and international relationships with a specialty in international finance from Tufts. Then he works in a VC firm before joining IDEX as a senior director at the lab division and corporate development strategy at Fortune 500 company IDEX. I just want to throw in a quick plug-in for IDEX because of the news that came out of Bloomberg and what happened with the CEO of IDEX, John Ayers. So it's a bicycle accident. And it seems like there's some complications from that. And from what we read, that Jay Mazelsky took over the CEO role for now, but it's a terrible tragedy. And I just know John personally, and I wanted to sort of acknowledge that and send my condolences to the family.
Yeah, that's super horrible. I met John last year at the Veterinary Innovation Summit, and just an all-around nice guy. So, just sending positive vibrations from everybody here at the Veterinary Innovation Podcast to him and his family, and we hope nothing but the best for him.
All right. So, Dan, was that a pretty accurate background that we dug on you?
Yeah, no, wow. I was impressed. You were able to figure out it was a grocer or a bagger at a grocery store many years ago. I mean, that was a pretty good rendition, Ivan. I'm interested to learn your sources, but yeah, no, that's about right. Cool. I also, if I may, for a moment, used to work closely with John at IDEX when I was particularly in the corporate development and strategy team. And, he's a mentor of mine. And, I once heard him describe at a charity event here called Junior Achievement, which does a number of good things for young, aspiring people in many different cities, but in Portland in this case, and called out John. And the speaker called John a mensch, which I guess in Yiddish is a complete man. So someone who's, a great, philanthropist, somebody who really, really appreciates the arts. And I know he does a lot for the Portland Symphony Orchestra. And, he started a charity for wildcats. He's an incredible cyclist. He actually got me into the sport. And his guidance to us, after all this happened was ride safe, wear your helmet, and, and be safe. So good vibes to John and his family.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're introducing. I forgot in the introduction to say that you are now a CEO of the new consolidator called Rarebreed Vet, and this is something new that's happening in Portland and in New England. And we just wanted to really start with the opportunity to kind of get you to give us 2 words on what is Rarebreed about, and we're going to give you a hard time and try to understand what consolidator market is doing, because it seems like quite a popular thing on the veterinary market, and there's controversy around whether it's good, bad for the industry. So why don't you start us with...
Yeah, that was your calendar appointment. That's great.
So why don't you give us 2 words about Rarebreed and what you guys are about? What's your kind of vision onto this industry and consolidation, and what inspired you to start this?
Yeah, so I think, what makes Rarebreed unique from our perspective is we're taking a really unique perspective on kind of what matters in the delivery of veterinary medicine with a particular focus on people. Our view is that this industry there's no question that the veterinary market is a growing one. There are all kinds of benefits that we're discovering, research driven, that are associated with pet ownership. for example, companionship for geriatric folks or people without many family members. We also know it's really good for, as you mentioned, Ivan, I have military background as an infantry officer, spent some time in a long-range surveillance detachment, some time as a combat advisor in Afghanistan. I commanded 10 U.S. soldiers and lived with a bunch of Afghans, but we know that it's very helpful for people with post-traumatic stress disorder as well. We also know that it teaches young children compassion, empathy, so many benefits associated with pet ownership that it's no surprise that more and more people are owning pets. And more people are also concerned and invested in the well-being and healthcare of their pets. And so our view is that this is a century-long trend, that pet ownership is going to continue to increase as we continue to learn more about the benefits of pet ownership. And so we're bullish on the market. And so what does that mean? Okay, well, there's no question demand is going up. And Ivan, as you mentioned, I'm an economist as well as a hobby. And demand is not the issue in this market. It's actually supply. And it's supply at the time of need, when my pet and when I have time to go to the doctor, and when my pet needs medical care, am I able to find a quality, qualified veterinarian and team to deliver the best health care? And, I think oftentimes that's very difficult to do. As we know, there are many unfilled positions at veterinary hospitals throughout the country. I know you guys are in Canada, but I'm going to focus on the U.S. for now. But that's a real issue. So how do we solve that issue? And that was part of the provenance of Rarebreed. We understood that there were other folks who were buying hospitals, and the benefits of owning and managing a number of hospitals is clear. You get greater buying power. You can deliver better services for the end user. You have a more integrated platform, bunch of benefits. But again, getting people and scaling culture are really, really hard things. So Rarebreed was born with the focus of really creating an exceptional work experience. And our view is that we can create an exceptional employee experience, that our teams will deliver an exceptional customer experience for their customers. And by the way, this is not new. There are a lot of other retail models out there, and I would bucket veterinary services as a retail business. It's retail healthcare, but retail nonetheless, where it's, you never know who's going to walk in the door. It's hard work. You have to be there. It tends to be 8 to 5, 8 to 6. It's oftentimes underappreciated, oftentimes underpaid. There are other allegories in other markets. There's, I don't know, the coffee market, the grocery store market, the convenience store market. And, interestingly, a professor from my grad school, you mentioned at MIT, her name is Zeynep Tan. She's Turkish. She actually did a study on a number of different companies that deliver exceptional customer experience, so employee experience. And really focused on a few companies that seem to be doing a really good job. And she named a strategy, basically pulled out a whole bunch of data points and put together kind of a 4-tenet strategy and called it the good job strategy, was focusing on Trader Joe's, Starbucks, Costco, Quick Trip, and Zara, I believe, and came up with a strategy. And we'd like to bring, I don't know if this is a perfect model, but an example like this into the veterinary market. So that's kind of Rarebreed, in a nutshell. Think of us, and our vision is we want to be the brand, we want to be the employer of choice for veterinarians coming out of grad school and vet techs coming out of school who want to deliver great health care to their customers.
Awesome. And you mentioned one thing about the expansion of the veterinary industry, and from what I understand as a sort of from experience as a veterinarian, and then when I was at IDEX, it seems like not necessarily the market. It's not more people or more pets out there, but I think that the quality of care that people provide to their pets is changing globally. And I think specifically in North America, they started using this term humanization of the pets. And I think that plays a significant role that our market expanding in how much people want to do.
I think as people, we tend to see the world through our own eyes. And I think the humanization of pets is kind of like, a symptom of that. And, in my experiences personally, I see that all around us, no question. But I've had kind of the benefit of seeing many different sides of the world. So, my father is first generation from Dominican Republic. My mother's first generation American from Chile. But, I've had the chance to visit some, call it developing places. I remember experience. I went to Dominican Republic for the first time. I got there in an airplane, got off the plane. I was wearing sneakers, and I remember this crowd of young kids chasing me to try to shine my sneakers, to make a couple bucks. But that, memory stuck with me. And then my time in Afghanistan, we were fully embedded with Afghans, kind of in the southeastern corner of Afghanistan, no other Europeans or Westerners there, I should say. And, really got a chance to see how Afghans interacted locally with their animals. And it's I'll tell you, in all those situations compared to what we see in the U.S., totally different dynamics. I mean, in the U.S. here, like my dog has a little bed. We take it out in the morning. We kind of take it to get groomed. We totally pamper it. My Boston Terrier sleeps in my bed. He's like my child. We carry him up to bed. We really have humanized him, and he is my furry baby. But what I've noticed is that this humanization of pets appears to be, at least anecdotally, really correlated to the level of affluence of a society. When I was in Afghanistan, the dogs that were there were basically like living in herds and competing with locals for like clean water and food. Like they were actually in competition for basic survival requirements, like the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Meanwhile, the U.S. soldiers, us together on our base, we would actually like bring the dogs in, we'd feed them, they'd sleep around us. And they actually really served a pretty nice functional purpose. There were early warning systems. They actually could smell like Afghans coming around. And so like, in a way, were protecting us, which was super cool. But my point is that, I think this humanization of pets theme, as our standard of living increases, it seems so does our bond and our ability to bond with another mammal. And the other anecdote I'll point, so I think that's part of the humanization of pets. Standard of living is increasing, mortality rate going down, quality of life increasing, length of life increasing. Those are just facts. Bond between humans and animals also increasing. That's sort of one data point in my mind. The other one that really occurred to me is, as I look at the world, is the more we rely on technology and move away from people, sort of like urbanization kind of brought us into cities. Digitization is bringing us into the internet and connecting the world, which is super cool. But at the same time, all our friends, or many of our friends, live on the internet. In a way, we're more connected, but in another way, we're less connected. And I think that gap is being filled by dogs, our relationships with dogs and cats. And I think it's natural for us to crave a mammalian bond. And, I think about a specific anecdote. I guess in some places, there's this type of disease called addiction to the internet. And it's a little bit more prevalent in Tokyo. And apparently the folks who are like totally addicted to the internet, like you get up in the morning and they're just like online all day, get up for like 3 reasons: to eat, to go to the bathroom, and then to feed their pet. And that's it. And so I think the further we get into our technology, into our phones, into the internet, into Facebook, Snapchat, LinkedIn, you name it, the further we get away from other humans and the more we crave and need that mammalian touch. So I think in my mind, those are kind of the two themes. I guess the third one, which is just kind of a cyclicality more than anything else, is, this kind of this graying of the world theme as the average population increases. Older and older people start to retire, have baby boomers, kids go away, they're empty nesters. They need to replace that with something. I think that's an additional element, but I think that one is more of a cyclicality than anything else. Those are kind of the 3 themes in my mind that support this concept of humanization of animals.
I'd like to get your opinion. I look at the Mars company, yes, the candy bar company with a net worth of $78 billion. They're the largest owner of veterinary hospitals in North America and continue to buy hospitals super, super rapidly. What do you think about their approach? And what don't you like about their approach, and what do you look up to them for? Give us a little bit of insight in what you think of that organization.
It's a family business. It's a private business. It's the 4th or 5th largest privately owned business in the world. Around Bechtel, I think, and Deloitte, similar sizes. And yes, they're out there buying. They've kind of started this trend in the veterinary market. I think their historical business model was vertically integrate the supply chain and kind of horizontally approach sales and marketing. So one, manufacturing supply chain, you make, Wrigley's the same way everywhere, but you might take a slightly different marketing approach in Brazil than you would in the Ukraine, than you would in Canada, than you would in the US, which I think is highly effective. Because what does that do? That creates local decision-making, local P&L authority, the ability to curate the message for that unique customer, but very, very, very low cost of goods. So they're really smart on the business end. So they're, as you said, a candy bar company. Well, they figured out that, hey, dog food's not that different what if we could grind up different kinds of meat, throw it in a bag, and sell it differently in different markets? And then they said, holy smokes, wait a second. The highest margin dog food bags are the ones that have recurring revenue elements and have therapeutic benefits. And you get a 7-year lifetime value with this high margin product. This is great. And then they realized, hey, the channel for that is veterinarians. This is an awesome market. It's growing. And so, what I respect about them is they're shrewd business operators. They're really, really good at running product businesses. They're newer to service business, which is a little different because changing a machine is different than changing a human to provide that service. So I think they're running it and they're realizing, and their history with Banfield plays this out, which is actually one of the inspirations for me starting Rarebreed. So I ran the in-house chemistry business at IDEX. We had Catalyst, Cat 1, SDMA, T4. Those were our products. We sold them globally. We're doing a Banfield implementation, and we won a contract from another diagnostic company. Banfield, of course, trying to beat up everybody on price because that's the model. Banfield, by the way, for your listeners, is the largest hospital chain in the U.S. and maybe the world, I think. And they're, I think, the first chain that Mars bought into back in, I think, mostly 2007, maybe a little earlier. But anyway, they're very, very prescriptive about how they run. There's one kind of diagnostic approach. And the way I learned about that was, as we sought out to understand them in order to win their business, they wanted bile acids as a test, in the chemistry panel. Our medical affairs group was kind of beating their heads against the wall because they were saying, well, no, medicine has gone away from that. That's a poor indicator of liver function in a pre-anesthetic panel. Like, medicine had gone away from that, but they were so prescriptive, like that's the way you had to do it. So how are we going to make that work? And medical care is not like making a McDonald's hamburger. Not to belittle that, but it's very hard to wash, rinse, repeat. And so that's an area where I think I don't like the Banfield approach, is that a practice is called a practice because it's defined by the protocols and experience of that individual. And veterinary medicine in particular is one of those industries. I think it's one of those professions. I think it's one of the oldest professions in mankind. As soon as we became agrarian, we were domesticating animals. We probably had dogs already. We were co-evolving with us. And you needed people who could take care of them. And for farms, certainly. And so there seems to be an element of veterinary medicine that's driven by experience. And, that's something that influences how you practice. And being able, trying to control that is, in our view, a terrible approach to encourage, retention and engagement of staff, because you're basically telling an individual who went to school, who's the top of their class in college, went to school for 4 years to be a veterinarian, we're super competitive, super smart, and now you're telling them how to basically make a hamburger, is really not a great approach. And so that's one thing I don't like about Mars. What I do like about Mars is they do realize and they appreciate that this is a growing business, that this is a 50 to 100-year trend, the humanization of pets, as Ivan alluded to. And they're making really smart bets that it's going to grow. The way they're doing it is a little different than how we're going to approach it, but they understand the wheel around a human and the pet, the food elements, the pharmaceutical, the diagnostic, the veterinary service element, and how everything fits in.
Dan, one of the things that I think will be really interesting for our listeners is, what does a first conversation look like with a consolidator? There's probably a ton of veterinarians that own their own business, that have operated for years, that are scared of a conversation with a consolidator because of what their friends have told them or what they've heard. What does a first conversation look like? If you're meeting a practice owner that's owned a practice for 20 years, they're profitable, they've paid off their building, they're looking to exit, but they're scared of that conversation. What does it look like? What does it sound like? Give us a little bit of insight.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes in many different forms. I think there's 2 main forms that the conversation starts. One is they go to a broker. They're like, okay, I want to sell. I want to get the highest price. I'm going to go talk to a broker to pretty it up and put it on the market. And then we'll have these conversations, and then I'll pick one. To be honest, in a way, it's a little bit becoming a seller's market, where it is a seller's market, where a lot of other consolidators out there who are saying, hey, come talk to me. I think what makes our approach unique, however it comes, is we do everything we can to really understand what's unique, not only about the practice, but about the individual who's selling it. What really matters, and that just comes from my experience in making deals. when we did deals at IDEX, when I did deals as a venture capitalist before IDEX. The best deals were made when I could understand, because there's like economics and their control. And those are two issues that can be dealt with. Those are like usually not the issues. There's something else behind it. I made a promise to a young veterinarian in my practice that that person could buy in. And now I'm kind of not honoring that by talking to you. So I feel really bad about that. That would be great to know. Or another veterinarian says, hey, what makes me nervous about selling is I can never live in a town where I drove by that practice and it had a different name. So that really, really matters to them. That's great. That's something that I take and I put in the mental bank and say, okay, I think we understand what matters to this person. And I said to you before, we can be flexible. So, do you want to continue to practice for 5 years? Do you want to continue to practice for 10 years? Like, we can make our model work for most sellers, which I think is a massive differentiator from other groups. So the conversation is really, hey, nice to meet you. Here's what we're about. Tell us about you. What matters to you? Why do you practice veterinary medicine? What's unique about your particular practice? Why do you practice in this town? What does your spouse do? Do you have any kids? What do you do for fun? What do you want to do? What are you going to do after you sell your practice? That tells a lot about a person. And again, this is all about people. And so if we can understand that, we can make numbers work. We can make structures work. Those are just functional elements of the deal. It's the emotional and human elements that really make it different. It reminds me of one business person. You asked me about Mars. The business person I really admire is Steve Jobs, particularly because he understood that it wasn't about the functional benefits of any particular product that they were going to sell. Like, that was baseline. And you could have engineers arguing all day about which one has more storage and which one has, better RAM and whatever, which has more pixels on its screen. At the end of the day, that really doesn't matter. It comes down to, how does a product make me feel? And that's what we're trying to create with Rarebreed. We want people to feel good about coming into partnership with us, that their customers are going to be taken care of, that their employees are going to be taken care of, that their legacy is going to be taken care of. That's what matters. That's what we're trying to strike. And so the conversation, to answer it again, is, what matters to you and how can we make this work? And not work from an economic perspective. How can we make this work?
Yeah, that's awesome. A couple more questions for you. So let's flip the tables. So instead of being the head of this new consolidator, Rarebreed, you're a hospital that is been in business for 20 years. You're the owner, and you're about to have a conversation with multiple consolidators. What book do I read to make sure that I negotiate the shit out of you when you come to try to talk to me? And how do I defend, or what don't I say? What things should I hold close to my chest and not? I know it's really an opposing question for what your prerogative is, but, help our listeners to be a little bit more educated. What do we hold close to our chest and what do we not hold close to our chest? And then any other book recommendation to maybe help me, get the best deal for me and my family and my employees.
Those are good questions. I don't think they're the right questions. I would ask myself first, why am I doing this? So I can't tell you how many people, get into it and get scared off because, like, oh my God, it's not what I expected it would be. It's like, deals are really hard. It's like, you're being stripped down naked and hit with a cold water hose, because anybody who's buying into a practice is going to want to know everything. So there's really nothing you're going to not want to tell. Maybe you want to advertise it a little differently at first to generate interest, but all the clothes is going to come off and they're going to see the birthmarks. And so, you might as well get ready for that. I think more importantly is, do you know what you're getting into? Do you have the resolve to go through with this, and what matters to you? Am I doing this because I want to spend more time with my grandchildren? Am I doing this because I'm sick of practicing veterinary medicine? Am I doing this because it's always been my dream to sail around the world and I'm going to buy a boat? Because that would help you answer some pretty fundamental questions like, how much do I need to make? Am I going to have enough for my retirement? Do I have to continue to work? Am I going to be happy with this new environment where I'm not making every single decision, or there's another stakeholder at the table that we're going to have a quorum on before we can make decisions that I used to just make myself? Does it matter to me to continue to practice, make most of the medical decisions, and do I not want to deal with HR and marketing? Because that's a whole different set of questions or potential buyers that would come from that. So I think the most important thing any one of your listeners can do if they're thinking about selling is really understand why they're selling. I've heard sellers say, like, market is really high now. This seems like a bubble. I want to get the highest price. That's great. That's an answer. Another is, hey, I want to spend more time with my kids. Another one is, I want more time. Another one's, I just don't want to practice veterinary medicine anymore. Those are all great. And understanding yourself is, I think, the start of this journey. Now, in terms of what book to read, there's a good basic book, lower middle market, that I read that's like kind of good. I'll Google the name here while I talk to you. That's just kind of like baseline, like how does a transaction work? What are all the phases? What goes on? The other important thing to do is to start getting kind of your house in order. So anybody who purchases a business is going to want to know your financials for the last 3 years from a P&L perspective, from a balance sheet perspective, from a tax return perspective. Like, you need those numbers in order. And the best thing to do, I think, is to prepare for that. Oftentimes, small business owners run a lot of personal expenses through there. That's going to impact the ultimate valuation of your business. You're going to want to clean that up. So you're going to want to take out personal expenses. You're going to want to sharpen the edge. You're going to want to basically expand your profitability. The multiple that's typically used is EBITDA, which everybody kind of throws around. It's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Really what it is what is the natural, normalized cash flow capability of the business, because it's all about cash flow. Okay, what matters in that cash flow situation? What is the durability of my customer base? Am I living in a good area? Do I have long tenured customers? That's great. Another thing that they're going to want to know is, remember I said at the beginning, this is all about relationships. It's goodwill that you're buying. You're not buying fixed assets. You're buying the relationships between veterinarians, techs, and their customers. What is the tenure of my team? If your team is all brand new, that would raise some flags. So you're going to want longer tenured team to the extent you can influence that. Higher EBITDA margins. Get rid of all those expenses that aren't necessary. Push your vendors on the diagnostic side. Push your landscaper. Push your business insurance. Try to get the best prices on those so you have a couple years where your P&L is expanded. Those are two of the best things you can do. And then get all your books in order. Make sure that your accountant's really running stuff through. Another thing to consider that's really important is, I've seen a company that was structured as a corporation, and there are really significant tax implications. 50% of what you would have made would go away because you have to pay it to Uncle Sam. That's a travesty. So just make sure you're structured the right way.